I'm Chris Cuomo. Thank you for the company. What do you say? Let's get after it. And by it, tonight, I mean what I think is an absolutely major moment in this presidential election. The first presidential debate, 1 week from tonight. Now, I know, I've said many times for many years, debates are more hype than value to you and me as voters. I believe that. I think there should be many debates on single issues that affect regional dynamics. I think there should be at least a dozen between the two main nominees. And I don't think there should be moderators. I think you should go Lincoln Douglas style so you can judge how these people handle themselves without interference. If one is being boorish, being arrogant, being indecent, you should see that and judge it as the adult that you are, and they should be. But all that said, this time it's different. And I believe this debate absolutely matters in a way that is extraordinary. Why? Because this race is extraordinary in that it has been made unusually, uniquely about the perceived inability of President Joseph Biden to basically function. The obvious reason for this play is Biden's age and stage, but there's a strategic play also in it. For Trump, Biden's perceived infirmity is the offset to his big deficit, which is his character, his reputation for being a lowlife. For the right and for Trump's campaign, the proposition is this. Sure, Trump may be imperfect, but they all are, right? And Trump is way more on his game than Biden. Do you really want President Kamala Harris if Biden goes down, which seems all but inevitable? That's the play. We get it. But there's a risk in that play. They are setting a very low bar for Biden. He literally basically has to survive. And that has bitten them before, like at the State of the Union. Do you remember all the low expectations? He'll never be able to do it. And we were saying here on the show to everybody that we spoke to, why are you setting it so low? Of course he's going to be able to do it. They made Biden a winner by just basic functioning. So this debate is going to be the showdown of how profound President Biden's sundowner syndrome really is. But there's another reason that I personally believe this debate could matter. Not the expectations of others, not yours, not mine. President Biden's own. I believe there is a moment for change on the Democratic ticket, and only one, and it only comes after this debate. I suspect the president after this debate will have a man-in-the-mirror moment if it goes badly beyond any real subjective analysis. If it's just not a close call that he could not compete on that stage. If that happens, I believe President Biden will ask himself how important it is to him to keep Trump from power and whether he needs to step aside to keep Trump from control. That is the only way President Biden is not the Democratic nominee. I do not buy that he's ill, that he's not going to make it, that he's going to bow out, that there's something planned at the convention, that the convention is going to be a shocker. I think that that is all propaganda and hype to scare you about voting for Biden. The debate very well could be the moment that makes or breaks the man, because after this debate, it will be clear whether President Joe Biden can go toe-to-toe with former President Trump once and for all. Now, as for the debate itself, pretty normal. President gets to go first, Trump goes last, each get 2 minutes to respond to questions, 1 minute rebuttal. The mics will be muted when the other is speaking. I hate that. You should be able to judge bad behavior and the inability to comply. There should not be guardrails for adults. And there will not be a live audience, as we've seen in the past. I like that because it doesn't play with your personal process and allow people to cede applause. There's all this fugazi stuff that goes on. Believe me, I've seen it. So what expectations must each man meet? How are they prepping? What are the pitfalls? James Carville, best mind in the business, is here. And to have him and me would be more than enough to cut up the issues and the tactics in something like this. But we have added value for me and Jimmy tonight. We have a unique angle. We have a unique guest. I'm going to bring in, for James's benefit and my own and yours, a young man who may have a better feel for what college-age voters are looking for than anyone. You know why? Because this kid actually went out to campuses and asked. He's not a kid. He's a young man with a great business. Andrew Grayson is the founder of Six Pack Coverage. You got to look it up on social media, okay? This guy went out with his team, surveyed more than 10,000 students, 18 to 25, from 51 colleges across the United States. No online sample, no return this, none of that BS. He actually did the door knocking. He didn't ask for political affiliation or gender, but did ask the top 3 issues as they were headed to the polls. This is valuable data, and he joins James Carville and I right now to discuss. Andrew, it's great to have you. James, as always, thank you very much. So what do you believe the headline is for people who are trying to get a feel for what the college people are going to do this time around?
Yeah, appreciate you, Chris. Thank you for having me back. James, great to meet you as well. I think based off this survey that we did, you can clearly see immigration student debt, which I think kind of appeals to both parties. Obviously, immigration is more kind of Trump's hammer. Student debt, I know Biden's been working on that the last couple of years. He's forgiven $153 billion in his policy, or his term, if you will. So it's kind of a neck and neck, but a lot of these were pretty surprising. You know, us going around trying to figure out these responses based off of predetermined 25 choices, and everyone had 3 responses they could give. Like I said, you didn't have to give your name, your political affiliation, just wanted to see if you were in college and if you were going to go register in November.
Hey, James, look at that. It's interesting. 5-1, foreign affairs versus immigration with college-age kids. I'm surprised by that, given all the nonsense we've been seeing on campus. What does this tell you about these kids, assuming that they actually come out and vote, James? And what does it mean heading into this debate?
Well, Andrew can attest to this. President Biden is not doing as well with younger voters as he should be. He's doing a little better with older voters. And the truth of the matter is, this economy is not that good for the people in college. College is very expensive. Mortgages are very expensive. I mean, they see themselves in a kind of a tight spot here, but I think it's valuable information. I just point out that these are young, under 30 college kids. There's a whole slew of people out there that are under 30 and not in college, but I think it's valuable information. And this comports with everything I see. The foreign policy, the issues in Palestine just don't resonate with under 30 voters. I mean, it does with some at Columbia and UCLA, but not much after that.
James, what do you think the big challenge is for Biden? And by the way, do you think it's a challenge at all, or do you think this debate comes and goes and I'm putting way too much pressure on it?
I don't know. I think that, in my own view, I still think that Trump is going to wake up on the morning of the 27th and say, I'm not going to do this. Because if President Biden, the State of the Union, they had to think of something, so they said he was full of drugs. And so he's kind of saying the same thing now. If Biden has a good debate, and understand, they're very vested in the fact that he's slobbering, doddering old man, can't get a sentence out, and if he looks pretty good, that can help him some. If he looks terrible, as you point out, it's going to cause a eruption in the Democratic Party. And Trump kind of knows this. And the only way that Trump wins is that if Biden does sort of poorly, but not terribly. And I can't believe that Trump agreed to this, but if hopefully it goes off. As a Democrat, I'd like to see it go off.
Well, I get it, Andrew. You know why? Because I'm not as smart as James, and which makes me more of a kind of a gut guy the way Trump is. Trump believes that his advantage is I'm going to make Biden look stupid, and that's going to be good for me. That's his play. Did you pick up from your poll, anecdotally as well, Andrew, that young voters are going to be watching this debate more for how Biden is than how Trump is?
Yeah, that's not something we asked, but that's something that we got a lot of response on. It's almost like it's a WWE match. People are tuning into this as if it's it's like a pay-per-view event when it's just a debate. Normally, I feel like most college kids wouldn't care, but this year I feel like it is completely different. Just given that, how is Trump going to respond other than attacking Biden? But like you said, the mics are going to be muted. It's a completely different ballgame than we're used to. From our responses, I think more people are kind of seeing how is Biden going to defend everything that Trump's been thrown at him, his health. I think that's the biggest issue based off of these responses we've gotten.
You had Biden up there. His health was third with voters. Jimmy, yes.
Right. If he's asked about his age, President Biden, he said, well, it's undoubtedly true that I'll be 82 in December. By the way, my belated happy birthday to my opponent who just made 78. But people can judge that as we go forward with this debate. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do it, because I can understand that people need some reassurance. I think that's a home run question for him. I think that's a question that he actually wants. He wants a direct answer the age question right to camera, and don't give some Hollywood answer about with age comes wisdom or something. You can judge it. That's why we're here tonight. He's 78, and I'm 81. I think President Biden wants that question. I think he needs a question, and if he's not prepared for it, well, then there's massive incompetence. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're ready for it.
Well, he's got to be ready. He can't do a Ted Kennedy. Andrew Grayson, you know what I'm referring to there, right? Ted Kennedy infamously did an interview with his buddy Roger Mudd, both may rest in peace, and he asked him, why do you want to be president? He couldn't answer it. But, James, what is your advice to Biden? James, you prepped one of the best minds I've ever been around in politics, and my brother reinforced my understanding of this because of how well he knew former President Clinton. And my brother and I, were raised by one of the best debaters I've ever been around. It was a reluctant one, but my father was great, and his style was very similar to Clinton's. Such mastery of context that they could take answers and bring them back to you a different way. Biden cannot do that. So what is he being coached to do up there?
And neither can 99.5% of the people in American politics do what your dad did or Bill Clinton could do. So that's an aspirational goal. That's Willie Mays, okay? That's what we're dealing with here. I think what Biden should do is interject new information that people don't know. So, of course, everybody knows about the 34 felony convictions, but not everybody knows that 26 women have credibly accused Trump of sexual impropriety. People don't understand that Trump had 20 infrastructure weeks when he was president. Biden actually passed a massive infrastructure program. I think what he's got to do, people think that there's disorder, but people don't know that the crime rate in this country is dropping and dropping fast. But I think any new information, I think going over plowed ground, 34 convictions, he's rude, he does these things, everybody knows that. He's got to look for an opportunity to interject some new and different information in this debate, because people are going to be watching. And Andrews, congratulations to him, by the way. A lot of people just sit out there and done it. He went out there and interviewed 10,000 people. That's the kind of people we need in American politics, people that get off of it and go do it.
Oh, he's the future, not just because of that glorious mustache that he has on his face either, but six-pack coverage is the future of independent media. This guy's going to be a very big deal with this outfit because it's like digital populism. Andrew, let me ask you something. Andrew, what is your feel for what will resonate with younger voters when they're watching Trump and Biden? What are the obvious pitfalls? What are the obvious wants?
Yeah, so first, appreciate the mustache comment. These cheeks haven't seen the sun since about 2015, so I thought I'd bring it out and give my inner Ron Burgundy a chance for tonight. But no, I think one of the biggest things, I think people want to see, the college kids want to see how is immigration going to be tackled. I think with a lot of these college kids, they live in a bubble. They live in a city. They don't have to worry about a job or paying for meals. They've got meal plans. Their housing is there. They don't care about a lot of other issues that maybe we think are more important. So I think a lot of kids want to see what's the immigration debate. You know, there's issues happening weekly with people getting murdered. There's just a 12-year-old girl in Houston that got strangled in a river this week. I mean, there's issues all the time that are happening. And then with Biden's health, I think just like James said perfectly, I think if I'm Biden's campaign, I want Trump to ask that. I want them to tee that up, because I think that's a big issue that a lot of people are going to be looking at is how are you going to respond saying, you're 81 years old going into the next 4 years. How can you, mentally run this country? So I think those are both the two kind of angles that college kids are going to be looking at the most.
I just hope it doesn't descend into this pathetic alleged ass-kicking contest. I just hope that's not where it goes. I'll tell you right now what I could do, and Trump will be like, yeah, I'd like to see it. That is America at its worst. I hope we can get away from that. James Carville, I appreciate the tactics and the strategy, as always. Andrew.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan of Andrew Grayson. I'm a big fan of Six Pack coverage. Andrew is the founder. People should check it out online. It is the future of independent media. It is digital populism. And thank you for bringing your insights here. You're always welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.
All right. Andrew will be back with us on debate night. Carville's a big shot. He's a big ticket on debate night. You got to pay him. We're a startup here. 4 minutes and 5 seconds. Coming up, we hear a lot of reports about, oh, look, Geraldo's calling me. Hold on. Hey, Geraldo, I was trying to get you on the show. You all right? I'll talk to you in the commercial. Hold on one second. When we come back, I've got Arwa Damon is inside Gaza. I wanted to get Geraldo to comment on what President Trump said about him. We'll see if I can get him on the phone or something. But Arwa is in Gaza, and she's going to give us a live update of how things have changed, what she's seeing, and what you need to know. My friend, brilliant journalist, and if you want to help kids, she's going to tell you how. Hey, brother. All right. You don't see a lot of people telling you the story from Gaza on American television. Why? Because they're not committed enough to get in. It's too hard to get in. And frankly, the coverage has gotten weaker and weaker as time has gone on. Not here. You have to know what's happening in Gaza, about the humanitarian crisis, about the state of play with the hearts and minds of people there. Okay? According to the UN, for context, the number of aid trucks, entering southern Gaza dropped by 71% since Israel invaded Rafah. Remember, they weren't living high on the hog before, right? There was disease, starvation, there was real problems with health, and aid was dire. Now it's 71% less. And the aid that does get in is not making its way to the citizens of Gaza. Why? It's complicated, and yes, Hamas does take a lot of the stuff for themselves, but it's more than that. The situation is so bad that by next month, it is anticipated that 1 million Gazans will face starvation. Now, this shouldn't matter most, but just to put it out there, if you don't think that is creating a new generation of people that hate Israel and us, you're making a mistake. Now, 2 months ago, one of the best people I've ever worked with in this business, now a former journalist, Arwa Damon, who is making a difference with her group, INARA, I-N-A-R-A. You want to help kids that are getting hurt in Gaza, who have needs in Gaza? Go to INARA and donate. So she is on the ground in Gaza again, realizing what's happening there, And she is here to tell us what's going on and to give you an opportunity to help her help these kids. Again, the group is INARA, I-N-A-R-A. Arwa Damon joins us now. Arwa, can you see me? Can you hear me?
I got you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Good. You look well, you look safe, and that's what matters to me. Please educate us. What are you seeing there? What do people need to know?
Look, in the last 2 months, if it was even possible, the situation has become even more catastrophic, even more desperate. And you really get this sense that people are going to crack. And you're starting to see that. It's not just, as you were mentioning there, that less aid is getting in. It's an issue that also a lot of the trucks that are coming through, and if you look at the numbers, more than 2/3 of the trucks coming through are commercial trucks, which means that produce is ending up on the market at unaffordable prices. I'm just going to give you one example. 1 kilogram of beef, so that's about like 2.5 pounds of beef, costs $60. Nobody can afford that. Things like tomatoes that are a staple for, the diet here, also completely and totally unaffordable. But put that also to one side. You have this growing problem when it comes to, looting and criminal activity regarding aid trucks and distributions. And you have smuggling networks that are beginning to, expand, smuggling in things like cigarettes. Because, Chris, one cigarette in Gaza right now, not a pack, one cigarette costs $25. And so there's the added challenge of not only are less aid trucks getting through, but moving aid trucks around Gaza is becoming significantly more difficult, not just because of the issues with deconfliction and the bombs and, the various permissions that are needed, but also because of this extra factor to be taken into consideration. And when you talk to people here, Chris, and this was something they had mentioned when I was here, 2 months ago, but now they're mentioning it even more. There is this very real fear of a slow descent into anarchy. And you feel these like dark, ominous undertones. And you sense that, everyone is just, they're exhausted. I mean, look, I was talking to one woman the other day and she was saying, we're not resilient. We want people to stop calling us resilient. We were forced into this. We're not superheroes. We're tired, and we cannot take this anymore.
What have you seen there that surprised you, even with your experience and understanding of the context?
You never get used to these stories. I went to Al-Aqsa Hospital to try to get, a bit more of an idea of the kinds of injuries and the kinds of treatment that they were going to be needing the long term, which is one of the things that UNATA focuses on. And there was a little girl who was in the hospital bed. She's 5 years old, and her aunt is with her. And her aunt was telling me that she had been flung from the building when the explosion happened. The little girl had been, and you can see her in those shots right there. She has this scar that runs down her chest like this. Her intestines, her guts had just spilled out of her. Her little brother is covered in burns. He's just a baby. What this little girl doesn't know is that her parents are dead. Despite that, Chris, what actually stayed with me from that whole interaction was the love that this aunt showed for her niece, for her nephew, and the fact that she promised that she was going to take care of them as if they were her own children. And there's another thing that we really need to be talking about over and over again, and the fact that the closure of Rafah was not just about the closure of one of the vital, humanitarian aid access points. It has also meant that since May 5th, no medical evacuations have happened. And so I met another little boy who also was injured, and he had taken shrapnel to the abdomen. It had basically, split apart his urethra. He's unable to go to the bathroom, and his bladder is basically kind of outside. Super high risk for infection. They tried to do 2 surgeries at the hospital. Both were unsuccessful. He needs to be medically evacuated. He is one of thousands of people, including children, who need to be medically evacuated outside of Gaza, either so that they don't die in Gaza or so that they don't end up with even more severe lifelong disabilities. You have, more and more people who are telling you stories about their loved ones, their parents who are dying because they weren't able to get their dialysis treatment. You have growing cases of cholera, diarrhea, hepatitis A, less access to bathrooms, less access to clean water, less access to sanitation. You listen to what doctors are saying, in the hospital corridors, and it's, hair-raising things like, yeah, this kid needs an amputation, but I'm thinking to myself, what's the point? Because it's going to get infected anyways, because there's flies all over the hospital. There's flies even, in the ICU. You meet another child, like I did when I was in there, who's got, metal rods poking out of every part of his leg, and he's moaning in agony because there aren't sufficient painkillers.
I want to ask you one other thing about the state of play, and then I want you to remind people how they can help your work there. So we just heard reports from the Israeli military that they believe, look, the obvious, you can't wipe out Hamas. It's an idea. And they are coming to the limit of what they can do tactically. How does that jibe with where you find the Gazan people in terms of their resolve to force Hamas to make this end?
Look, there's something that everyone needs to understand. The Gazan people have not been able to force Hamas to bend to the will of the people. We have to remember back in 2020 when there were demonstrations, against the way that Hamas was ruling, and they were cracked down on very, very quickly. We also have to remember that on October 6th, only about 25% of the population supported Hamas. When you talk to people right now today, and I have these conversations all the time, they are fed up. They are done with Hamas, and they were already done with Hamas. They do not want to necessarily see Hamas ruling Gaza again. They know what that means. They have had it with this idea of, Gaza is going to, stand strong, and Gaza can give martyrs. People here did not choose to be, martyrs for whatever it is, that Hamas is trying to accomplish, as much as they did not choose to be cannon fodder for the Israeli side. And so you do really get the sense that people want rule of law. They want a change. They want something, anything that is going to end this. But can they actually do anything to pressure Hamas to, take a deal, to alter the way that it's acting right now? They can't. And that is a reality that needs to be acknowledged at this stage. The other issue, too, Chris, that people really should be aware of is that, yes, Hamas is an ideology, but that ideology that everyone is referring to is beyond what Hamas is. It's not necessarily the ideology of Hamas per se, but it's the ideology of needing to stand up to occupation. And so for a lot of people in Gaza, that ideology is, I'm going to fight occupation with my pen. I'm going to fight it by being successful. I'm going to fight it by getting an education. The challenge, though, is that, yes, the more death, destruction, and despair that is created, the more likely it is that in the future, it'll be a lot easier to recruit people into, armed force than it is right now.
I mean, you and I saw that so firsthand in what happened with the United States and its war on terror. Inara.org, www.inara.org. Don't just say you care about what's happening there. Show it. Help people like Arwa and her team get the help to the kids who need it on the ground. You can care about them, and you can still think Hamas is in the wrong. You can do both. Arwa, please stay safe. Thank you for the gift of your insight, and thank you for the work you're doing on the ground for the people who need it. Arwa Damon, I'm telling you, one of the best. Up next, Trump takes a shot at Geraldo. Not on our watch. Geraldo will react to what his former friend and former president said. So Trump does this interview with the author of a book about The Apprentice, okay? And during the interview, the former president is asked about his relationship with my man, Geraldo Rivera. It was recorded. Listen to what he said.
What was Geraldo like?
He was good. He did a good job.
Yeah.
He was smart, cunning. He did a good job.
And are you guys still close, or are you no more?
No, I don't think so. He is... After I lost the election, I won the election, but when they said he called me up 3 or 4 times. I didn't take his call because I was so busy fighting it, with what went on. And we've caught him. I don't know if you see it, but you will. But he called me up 3 or 4 times. And finally I had a little time. I called him back. And he went on Fox and he started talking about the president called me. I didn't call him. I returned his phone call. And he started talking very personally about how I was feeling, how I was doing. And I said, that's really a betrayal. I didn't talk about how I was feeling. It was a phone call that lasted very quickly. Just, hey, how you doing, Geraldo? How's it going? It's not my deal. He's not my psychiatrist. Right. But he made it sound like it was such a big deal. It was a nothing. All I did was return his call. But he said, the president called me, like I'm reaching out to him. Yeah. And I haven't spoken to him since.
Let's just be clear. He didn't win the election. He didn't catch any rigging of the election. The opposite has happened at every turn of litigation and fact-finding about that issue. And in fact, there's even now audio proof of the president acknowledging that. But he wants you to believe that the democracy is at risk. You can judge that the way you want. Now, how should we judge what he just said about Geraldo? Let's bring in NewsNation correspondent at large, Geraldo Rivera. Thank you very much for being Johnny on the spot. I know that you are on break, so thank you for this interruption. What do you make of these musings?
Well, I'm here with our friends, Eric and I, with our friends Karen and Chip Jakin in Canada, when Dusty. I feel nothing but melancholy and a wistful kind of friendship lost. It's like I like the president very much. I still like him, except what he did on January 6th. That kind of ended our relationship. But he called our house periodically. It was not me that called the president. I hate to contradict him. I don't want to get into a big pissing match with the former president of the United States. But he used to call on a regular basis. He called Friday, the 13th of November, 10 days after the election in 2020. And we did have a conversation. He called me. I felt awful about it. I wanted to console him for his loss, his very tight loss. But he lost, and he started asking me about things like, have I heard about Dominion? One of the computer companies that counts votes that he alleged was run by Hugo Chavez or some absurd kind of surmise. I feel bad when listen. You and I have been friends for a long time. We have a kind of love for each other. We care about each other. I care about the former president of the United States. We used to be close. We used to, I loved being on The Apprentice in the last year that he did it. He was very kind to me. He was kind to Erica. He was kind to my family. When my daughter Sol started crying, he consoled her, my 10-year-old at the time. He was very, very sweet and considerate and compassionate. I don't want to fight with him, and I hate that reporters are trying to make something of this that wasn't there. Even listening to him, it sounds like he misses me. I miss him too, but I can't support him because of what he did on January 6th, Chris.
We know he monitors NewsNation. What do you want him to know?
Just that I still love him and that I remember the good times. I remember going to the fights in Atlantic City and just hanging out and talking about life. And he was for me, he was like my rabbi, like on The Apprentice. I should have been thrown out on The Apprentice. They had one of the Jonas brothers and I were head to head. And he took my side, even though NBC producers were saying, no, take the Jonas brother. He's better for the demo than that old man. Trump stuck by me. And, it's been a relationship that was very easy, very natural over the years. We started together in New York in the mid-1970s. I feel awful about the way things have turned out. I feel awful that he has in his mind this obsession that the election was fixed. I think that he's done a lot of harm to the Constitution. But I just want him to know that I have no ill will toward Donald Trump at all. That I choose to remember the good times that we had, Chris.
Well, I think it's a very important instruction for people about the difference between the two men. You don't do tit for tat. Once somebody's in your heart, they're in your heart. There's nothing transactional about your friendship. I don't think the same can be said about your friend, the former president. But I appreciate you for checking in from vacation and speaking from the heart to the audience. I appreciate you, big brother.
Okay. Same here, brother. Same here. I love you.
All right. Enjoy yourself. Geraldo Rivera, ladies and gentlemen, class. Up next, two of the biggest stars of music, Justin Timberlake, Travis Scott. Both have been arrested. Why is it like all we heard about was Timberlake with his DWI alleged, and Scott with trespassing and disorderly intoxication? It's like, why? Why does the media have a field day with one and meh with the other? I don't get it, so I'm bringing in someone who does. So I'm literally doing this segment because I don't get it. You got Travis Scott, big deal, right? Justin Timberlake, big deal, right? Both got arrested this week for charges that were related to alcohol consumption. All right, neither one is like the biggest thing in the world, and we don't even know if the allegations are true yet. But the coverage of the two, the reaction has been so different. Rapper Travis Scott, also the father of Kylie Jenner's kids, was arrested early this morning in Miami. Trespassing is the charge, disorderly conduct, discon they'll call it, public intoxication, after causing some disturbance on a yacht in Miami, allegedly. The story has been reported online, but you know what I mean? It's a big deal. But then Justin Timberlake gets a DWI arrest because he wouldn't take the breathalyzer. He says he had one drink. I understand why he wouldn't want to take the breathalyzer in that case. And it blows up my town. And it's all over the place to this moment. Let's bring in the host of Naughty But Nice podcast, PR expert Rob Shooter, who often I have turned to in my career to help me understand. Rob, once again, wow, are those braces you have on?
They're very Larry King.
Let me ask you, please help me understand why Justin Timberlake, everybody's blowing up, Travis Scott,
Yeah, you're onto something here. I think with Justin, it's the surprise factor, the image that he had, the golden boy image that he had. Now, maybe that bubble has been burst. Where Travis, we didn't we were not so shocked by this for him. So it's literally who you come into this situation as. And Justin came in as the golden boy, and now people are reassessing, is that really true?
So is there a little bit of a desire to bring Timberlake down and Travis Scott? They don't want to see him go down as much. Maybe he's had his own problems already, so they just treat it as a matter of fact?
Yeah, we love to build people up and then tear them down. And when I say we, I'm not just talking about the media here. This Justin story will continue as long as people keep reading it. And I got to say, at the moment, it's one of the hottest stories online. It's trending everywhere. People can't get enough.
I don't get... What is he supposed to do? You know, Dusty said to me he should put out a statement saying, I know you shouldn't drink and drive. I feel like that will only feed the story more. We don't even know if he did it. I don't think it's weird if he knows he had a drink that he didn't want to blow. I'd give you the same advice, Rob.
Yeah.
You know, if you've had any booze at all, don't blow. Does this really make him a bad guy, even if he did it?
I don't think it really does here. I think it's the surprise factor. I think he's going to be okay through this. He's on tour at the moment. And let's remember, too, if he really was a drunk, and some people are implying that, he would be missing shows. He wouldn't have this amazing career. So on his day off, he might have had a drink too many. Driving's really stupid. He shouldn't have done that. But he'll be okay. He's going to survive.
Why is it that you never hear about celebrities getting caught doing good things? Like Travis Scott, I'm sure, has done plenty of things in his career to help people, to do things. You never hear about it. And then you hear about this, it sounds like much ado about nothing. Maybe he had a couple too many drinks, he didn't want to leave at the right time on some yacht. So what? But you never hear the good stuff. Why?
Yeah, celebrities would love for us to talk about the good stuff. They're publicists. They pay them a lot of money to get those good stories out. Unfortunately, the world we live in, the more scandalous, the more naughty, the more readers, the more clicks you get. You know, you are naughty, but you are nice. Rob Shooter, thank you for the insight. As always, I appreciate you.
Good to see you.
4 minutes, 45 seconds. He looks good with those braces. Should I try that? Please. I couldn't pull it off. More questions about the COVID vaccine. I'm going to line up the allegations in this new lawsuit that you see bouncing around the internet, brought by Attorney General Kobach. I invited him on the show. He couldn't make it tonight. He's still invited. But I'm going to bring someone in who understands the vaccine technology and research. Which allegations should get your attention? Kansas Attorney General Chris Kobach filing a lawsuit this week. Now, he is a big Trumper, and this plays well with the fringe Trump supporters. But Trump is not touting this lawsuit, claiming Pfizer was making misleading and deceptive claims about its COVID vaccine. It's a very interesting political disconnect. Trump supporters are anti-vaccine. He is not. Do the allegations in the suit line up with science? Let's bring in Cornell University virologist and vaccine researcher, friend of show, Dr. John Moore. Doc, thanks again. Appreciate you, especially on short notice. Let me go through these main allegations. You give me your take on whether they'll stand up. First one, they wrongly claim the vaccine prevents transmission. This is not a vaccine, it's a therapeutic. Fair?
Totally unfair. Vaccines generally don't prevent transmission. What they do is reduce the severity of infection, reduce hospitalization, and keep people out of the morgue. And they've done that spectacularly well.
But when I get a vaccine for measles, mumps, rubella, I don't get those things. When you get the vaccine for COVID, you still get it.
Well, they're different viruses, and our immune systems deal with them in different ways, and the vaccines against them work in different ways. So it's a false analogy. Just because a measles vaccine is for life doesn't mean that a vaccine against a different virus made by a different way works in exactly the same way. The science is different.
Following up on that we were told that the vaccine would, this is the allegation, would protect against new variants, and the protection went down with each variant, but the messaging didn't change. False advertising.
I don't know what advertising was done. I'm a scientist. I don't follow the media advertising campaigns. But the vaccines lost their ability, or had reduced ability, to protect against infection because the virus diversified from mid-2021 onwards to an extent that nobody predicted. Nobody saw that extent of variation coming. Nobody predicted the Omicron surge. So the vaccines lost potency against mild infections, but they retained their ability to protect against severe disease and death. And up until this day, a disproportionate number of COVID deaths are in people who were never vaccinated.
You call that red COVID. You really believe that people on the basis of their political feelings about the vaccine, it wound up having a determinational effect on their health?
Well, red COVID is very real. It's a statistically proven phenomenon whereby if you are a resident in a county or a state that voted Republican in 2020, from 2021 onwards, you are disproportionately likely to die of COVID, because you are disproportionately less likely to be vaccinated and therefore not protected. And the reason you're less likely to be vaccinated is you're bombarded with disinformation from right-wing media sources, notably Fox News, and by the political leadership of the red states.